Our next speaker coming up is Christie Lagalli from Rebellyous Food. She's the founder and CEO of Rebellyous Food, and also a mechanical engineer and holder of 5 patents in manufacturing technology. She spent much of her career in the aerospace industry, working on commercial airplanes and spacecraft at the Boeing commercial airplanes. Quite a fun fact, I would say. Previously, she has served as a senior scientist for the Good Food Institute, uncovering the technical barriers in the development of plant-based and cultivated meat. Rebellyous Foods is a food production technology company working to make plant-based meat price competitive with traditional chicken products. Today, she'll be talking about the manufacturing challenges of plant-based meat, so I'll give the screen to her so she can explain it further. Go ahead.
Good morning. My name is Christie Lagalli, and I'm the founder and CEO of Rebellyous Foods. At Rebellyous Foods, we design and build the next generation of plant-based meat production methods and equipment. We're working to make plant-based meat products available and affordable for everyone through manufacturing technology. Today, I'm going to share with you the engineering and manufacturing challenges of making plant-based meat and share a bit about our work at Rebellyous to make plant-based meat and take plant-based meat production to a whole new level. Pardon me. So we have a diverse audience at many places I speak at, so we'll level set on the type of products that we consider plant-based meat. I'll be talking about the production of meat analogs typically made from vegetable protein and meant to mimic the taste and function of meat. Many of you might be familiar with products like the Impossible Burger or the Beyond Burger. Oops. But this industry has a 120-year-old history in the US alone. So perhaps some of you have tried products like the Grano sausages or the Vegelona plant-based meat products of the 1960s. We've been manufacturing plant-based meat for a long time. But as you may know, compared to the days of Vegelona, the plant-based meat sector has taken off in popularity. For the first time, we are now seeing massive unmet demand. And to understand production, we need to understand the state of supply versus demand. By 2030, the market demand for plant-based meat is expected to reach $85 billion per year, and some estimates expect that to be even higher. Yet global production of plant-based meat will only meet about $20 billion a year, or about a quarter of the demand, even with the large growth rate of 14.6%. Hence, projected demand will far outpace sales in the next decade. In fact, in the US meat industry alone produces over 108 billion pounds of animal meat each year. And yet the cumulative plant-based meat industry only clocks in at less than 0.5% of that volume. This means the vast majority of people don't have access to meat replacement, despite the fact that they are trying to reduce their meat consumption for human health, climate change, animal welfare, and now pandemic prevention reasons. And yet, demand for plant-based meat is expected to rise further as more people on our planet are impacted by the fallout of industrial meat production, including dwindling public and personal health, climate change, agricultural pollution, and animal cruelty issues. And we see a continued rise in the interest of alternatives to animal-based meat. And in the middle of this pandemic, we have come face to face with the fact that the intensive animal agriculture is one of the most looming threats for the next global pandemic. So we have an unprecedented situation here. The world is demanding plant-based meat alternatives, or meat alternatives in general. And all we can do is produce enough plant-based meat for 1 meal per person per year. That's like advocating for people not to drive their car to prevent greenhouse gas emissions, and then saying that they can only use public transit one trip out of the year. Plant-based meat as a solution to global problems is hamstrung by plant-based meat production. But to further understand, we have to dive a bit deeper into the history of plant-based meat production to understand this problem. First, currently, nearly all plant-based meat is made in one of two ways. With some exceptions, I'm not claiming to claim all the industry. For the most part, about 80% of products are made via mix and form methods, and many more are made via high moisture extrusion. And to understand why we make plant-based meat in this way, let's go back to the beginning of manufactured meat analogs. One of the first meat analogs sold commercially was Protos, canned for sale in 1899. From there, products like Nutfoda and Zoiburger were available in 1910 to the 1930s, and more prepared products like Choplets in the 1940s. By the 1960s, we see products that we recognize as plant-based meat we know today, like Bacos. By the 1970s, more popular brands like Morningstar emerged and high-quality products from Ives were introduced in Canada. In the 1990s and 2000s, Boca, Tovardenberger all came forward with excellent products, and there were many, many more from there forward that we see in supermarket shelves today. What's interesting to note about this timeline is the affiliated manufacturing advancements that these products represent. In 1899, canning made plant-based Protos possible simply because the sale of food was safe in cans. But by the 1920s, the isolation of protein from plants started to make more specific products with high protein ingredients possible. This mix and form methodology of ingredients, including isolated proteins, for making finished goods, allowed for products that were more nutritionally similar to manufactured meat products for the first time. And by the 1940s and 50s, the ability to start structuring protein via protein spinning or sausage making method led to the rise of products like Vegelona, and continued to develop there to produce products like Bacos, which were then later produced via another advancement, low moisture extrusion, to make textured vegetable protein, commonly known as TVP. So many products were simply defined by their ability to produce or to distribute them, such as these canned products, plant-based meat products, some of which are still sold today. Likewise, simply mimicking the current meat production method for plant-based meat versions proved quite effective for many products such as hot dogs and sausages. But companies like Worthington's were determined to advance the cause of meat replacements starting in the 1950s with manufacturing methods like protein spinning for better plant-based meat texture. And General Mills took protein spinning to a whole new level with dedicated research and manufacturing facilities for spun fibrous protein products. Much of this method was later then replaced with the advent of low moisture extrusion to make textured vegetable protein, or TVP, used so commonly today. ADM and many other companies now make a wide variety of high-quality TVP products that are used in many plant-based meat products today. So once developed, low moisture TVP was quickly incorporated into that mix and form method that our industry has always used. And this method of making high quality plant-based meat products has lasted till today with Beyond and Impossible made the same way. Products from mix and form using TVP make up much of the industry today. Nevertheless, advancements continued in fibrous structuring of protein with high moisture extrusion, leading to even more meat-like products. So given that mix and form methodology is the most common and most cost-effective for producers, let's take a look at what this production consists of. For the most part, mix and form plant-based meat factories are those that also make animal meat. Our veggie burgers and plant-based nuggets are made on the same or similar equipment as their animal-based meat counterparts and often in the same facility. The off-the-shelf equipment most typically used are bowl choppers, tumblers, and continuous fryers for coating products like chicken. And while these tools can make plant-based meat, they have been doing so since the days of Worthington hot dogs, they aren't very efficient at doing so and introduce many bottlenecks for plant-based meat. And let me explain why that is. Industrial meat processing equipment was designed to do exactly that, process meat. Rotating blade equipment was designed to break down the structure of animal carcasses into malleable doughs and formed into hamburgers or chicken nuggets. This subtractive manufacturing process shown on the left, from chicken to chicken nugget, is what the equipment was designed to do well. On the opposite end of the spectrum is the production of plant-based meat, where ingredients from many sources are carefully brought together to create a cohesive structure. And while forces imparted by meat processing equipment can mix the ingredients together, the equipment is imprecise and problematic for this additive manufacturing of plant-based meat dough, shown on the right. So, in fact, any processor of plant-based meat undoubtedly has a similar list to ours at Rebellyous. Essentially, that off-the-shelf meat processing equipment causes us to make products unnecessarily batched processed, requires excessive labor, inconsistent mixing, heating, and cooling issues, and many other bottlenecks. And as a result, in the market, we see low production and high demand. But we also need to address the underlying myth of scaling in the plant-based meat industry. In order to make plant-based meat cost competitive, many advocates believe it's just a matter of scale. The belief is that if we were just as big as the meat industry, the economics of scale would solve the high costs of plant-based meat production. This is partially true. Economies of scale usually bring savings, but the plant-based meat industry needs to compete one-on-one with animal meat in order to And as a result, we need to understand the barriers to cost competitive COGS, or cost of goods sold, for meat analogs. So let's first talk about the scaling myth around bringing down the cost of plant-based meat. On a per pound basis, the cost to produce plant-based meat remains considerably higher for three main reasons. One, plant-based meat ingredients are just 2.5 times costing more. The ingredients themselves cost that much more than animal-based meat. Until this changes, it will be difficult to compete with meat. And economies of scale will help, but it will be difficult to close a 100 to 200% gap in price. Second, per our discussion of additive manufacturing, there are more steps and higher labor costs to making plant-based meat. This is a per pound price problem and not necessarily impacted by scaling. Hence, economies of scale does not change the fundamental work done to each pound of product. And finally, equipment currently used in making products is used for longer because of more steps and wears out faster due to different material processes. Hence, such equipment poses a high capital cost and high amortization in the COGS of plant-based meat. Again, this is a per pound price problem and not solved by economy of scales. So how do we even solve this problem? Essentially, we look to the meat industry. Manufacturing technology and automation is what makes chicken and other meat cheap and readily available since the onslaught of industrial manufacturing in the 1950s and 60s. But nothing like this exists in the meat industry today. We are changing that at Rebellyous Foods. We're designing and implementing a new generation of equipment to make plant-based meat faster, higher quality, and less expensive. By doing so, we can address the price differential of plant-based meat production through addressing the manufacturing costs, which are unnecessarily high due to a lack of manufacturing technology ever applied to our industry. For example, most plant-based chicken nuggets can be produced at just under $3 a pound, but it's a far cry from the $1.60 or $1.50 a pound that our animal-based chicken nuggets are made. With our new Rebellyous production systems, we're poised to make Rebellyous products at the same price as animal-based chicken. So I'd like to just share a little bit about our work at Rebellyous. Unfortunately, as an early stage startup, we're still patenting and prototyping our equipment, so I can't show you the equipment directly, but I'd love to share the process for creating a platform for the next generation of plant-based meat production. Rebellyous is building a new platform for mix-and-form production of plant-based meat. The new platform has come out of 24 months of research and to define the problems, including bottlenecks, process effectiveness, energy usage, takt time, labor hours, sanitation, safety, and logistical needs. Well, we've documented and prioritized these issues with further research and design. From this enormous database of process and equipment research, we've then established a design philosophy that directs our platform. This includes, but is definitely not limited to, a desire for continuous production, superior sanitary design, and low capital cost of the scalable equipment. Finally, over the last 12 months, we've designed novel production equipment and processes that address our philosophy and bottlenecks. And in our research and production facilities in West Seattle, not only do we actively produce products for sale of our Rebellyous chicken products, but this is also a facility that is a living laboratory for deploying our new production equipment and methods to simultaneously bring down the cost of chicken, or plant-based chicken. As a result, we believe we can bring down the cost of production by 60%, getting us all almost near the price of chicken, increase production capacity of a facility by 2 to 3 times, and dramatically improve the quality of products, meanwhile offering their industry a scalable technology for lower cost facility replication. So not only are we winning the consumer market, but also the food production market, as our technology allows us to scale up plant-based meat to meet that overwhelming market demand. And from those advancements, we can go even further to the Horizon 2 technology for better frying, freezing, protein structuring, and Horizon 3 for facility-level integration, which allows our food industry to make the transition from animal-based meat factories to cost-competitive plant-based meat factories. So just to wrap up here, I'd like to offer an extension to our plant-based meat production timeline from earlier. From the mix-informed processes of today, the next generation will be the Rebellyous Mach 1 production system coming in 2021. From there, I see opportunities for manufacturing technology to solve issues like the constant battle for cleaner labels and protein structure that includes all ingredients and doesn't have to be post-processed. And these are just a handful of opportunities for the production technology solutions can make for plant-based meat industry. And not just to be able to meet the extraordinary market demand, but to also be a genuine solution to replace meat for all the social justice reasons our society has come to value. Thank you so much for letting me share this journey with you. And I look forward to talking to questions.
Thank you so much, Christie, for this exciting presentation. The first question would be, do you plan to expand to Europe as well? I know most of our listeners are from Europe and Estonia, so this is extremely exciting to hear from you.
Yes, we believe the best way to expand the work that we're doing is actually to license and share the technology. So we don't just want to export products, although we'll do that at some point too, but we also want to export the capability to set up more efficient factories and capability of converting animal-based meat factories to plant-based meat factories. So we can definitely do that in Europe.
All right, wow, good news for us. I have time for one more question, and it goes like this. How can demand be said to exceed supply when products are never fully sold out?
Well, that isn't the case in our market. In the United States, it's sold out all the time. We frequently get calls from customers who've never bought from us and just said, we want to buy plant-based meat. We always bought from this other company and we can't get a hold of it this month or this year or whatever. So it sells all the time here. So maybe that's a different market that's just not as knowledgeable about plant-based meat, so I'm not quite sure what market that is, but that's not what's happening in the US.
Great, yeah. Well, I think that's a good problem to have, rather that way. All right, but at this point, I'd like to thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you in the panel, which is coming up very soon. Thank you, Christie.
Thank you.